listening to KFWW, Walla Walla, Washington, 1859 on your radio dial. Welcome back to this evening's performance. News. We have a weather alert. Cumulus clouds. They're dark and green. There's lightning. You can smell the ozone. High wind gusts heading up the valley towards our fair city. Weatherologists are scrambling to find the source of this bizarre storm. Will it settle on our city? Will it be able to lift over our blue mountains? Prepare for the worst. Don't touch that dial and keep your radio tuned to KFWW for the latest in weather news. Tonight's performance of Haunted Halls of History will resume after a brief break for our radio sponsors. Do you have an itch you cannot scratch? A persistent, irritating, inaccessible itch that distracts you from doing important things like crocheting, playing pinochle? Does it distract you from churning the butter? If that sounds like your itch, listen to Betty and Susan as they are shopping at the neighborhood drugstore.
Susie, can I ask you a question? It's kind of personal, and I have a problem. I don't get to talk about it.
Of course, Betty. Whatever. We've been friends for a long time. What is it?
Well, I have this itch. It's right here in the middle of my back. It drives me crazy, and I can't reach it. I rub against the wall. I've tried the scratcher, and my husband helps when he's at work during the day. Sometimes it's so bad I can't even stand up straight.
Wow, Betty, that is bad. Have you seen a doctor?
No, when I go there, it doesn't itch. I don't know what to do.
Well, let's ask the pharmacist.
Okay, now would be a good time. It's itching again.
Excuse me?
Yes, ma'am?
My friend has a problem. She has a terrible itch that bothers her. Can you recommend something?
You bet. See, this cures any itch in minutes. It's Itch Be Gone ointment. A colleague of mine makes it out of all natural ingredients. Here, put a little on your friend's itch and see how it works.
Thanks. I'll be right back.
Susan and Betty have stepped into one of our privacy booths. It will be a few moments, and here they come.
I am so happy, Mr. Pharmacist. That stuff really works. Itch be gone, you said?
Itch Be Gone ointment. Would you like to buy a tube of it?
Oh, no. I may need 2 tubes of it. Itch be gone ointment. It really works.
I'll take a tube of Itch Be Gone ointment too.
Well, if you often have that itch, I also carry Itch Be Gone ointment in the economy size jar too.
Oh, yes. I'll take one of those too.
Well, Betty, I think this is one itch you can scratch off your list of problems. Solved.
Thanks to Itch be gone ointment and such a good friend.
And your friendly neighborhood pharmacist who sells Itch Be Gone ointment. Good night, ladies.
Good night.
On a more serious note, there has been no weather updates on a mysterious, fast-approaching storm. So stay tuned at 1859 on your radio dial for the latest in weather information. Does the approaching storm make you think of a large, hearty bowl of soup? After another short commercial break, we will return to tonight's performance of Haunted Halls of History, hosted by the one and only, the Man in Black. So I will wish you a good night. Stay safe and stay dry. What's for supper? How many times have you heard that question, Mr. Homemaker? Would you like a quick and easy answer? Well, Kettle Magic, the soup that has the answer for you. Let's listen to a typical conversation as Mr. Homemaker meets a friend at the local grocery store.
Oh, hi, Marge. You always make such delicious meals. I was wondering if you could tell me just how you do it.
Oh, it's simple. Just keep your pantry stocked with Kettle Magic soups. They have dozens of great meals that my family just adore. For instance, tonight we're going to have Kettle Magic goulash. It's made with lots of hearty beef chunks, potatoes, carrots, celery, and all in a wonderful sauce. I just open a few cans, heat them on the stove, and serve with some bread and butter. It's simple, delicious, and my family loves it. Kettle Magic soups save me time and work.
That sounds great, Marge. What other kinds of Kettle Magic soups do you suggest?
My family also likes the mutton melody and the duck soup. Lots of meat, plenty of broth, and they taste great. Hey, why not head over to the soup aisle and see what else they have?
Thanks, Marge. I'll do that. Hey, my wife is crazy about turnips. Do they have soups with turnips?
Oh, sure. They have Kettle Magic turnip porridge. It makes a great casserole, too.
Thanks, Marge. I'll make a place for Kettle Magic on my kitchen shelf.
Wonderful. We'll see you later.
Hey, Marge, I have an idea. Why don't you and your family join us for Sunday lunch? I'll make something special with a little help from Kettle Magic soups.
That sounds really nice. Thanks. I'll bring a Kettle Magic casserole, too.
Well, I'm off to the Kettle Magic soup aisle. See you later, Marge.
Bye. I'm looking forward to sharing some gossip and some Kettle Magic soup. See you on Sunday.
Good evening. You are listening to Haunted Halls of History, coming to you through Somewhere in Time. I'm your host, the Man in Black. Before we begin, an update on the mysterious storm that is approaching Walla Walla. We don't know much, but we can assume this: it's going to be dark. A good time to stay home, listen to the radio as we talk of things that aren't always easy to listen to. Tonight, my guest is Dr. Walter Branton, a physicist from Whitman College here in Walla Walla. He claims he has tapped into the unknown ether. Is also claiming that he has made mankind's first contact with the other side through radio frequencies. Good evening, Dr. Branton.
Good evening, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much for giving me a chance to present to you and your audience tonight evidence and to prove my theory, which is more than I can say of the short-sighted trustees at the college. What you're presenting may sound to your audience like the ramblings of some crackpot mystic, but that is not me. I am a man of science. I deal with cold, hard facts, and that is what I have for you tonight. And I offer you and your audience a demonstration. Now, what this here looks like an ordinary radio, but I have outfitted it with my patented flux transistor, and when this is on, it taps into the very ether itself. Now, this is not ghosts and goblins, I want you to know. This is real people who, in their flesh and blood, bestrode this valley of ours back in time, and they are reaching out to us from the ether. And I am the first scientist who has made confirmed contact with them.
Doctor, I must say, I find these boasts a little incredible. Perhaps you could offer us some proof.
Gladly. Give me a moment to tune in.
My name is Mary Jane Powell, and I will tell you my story if you agree not to judge me. Yes, I know it was called the Aurora Hotel murder, but the story is complicated. The year was 1888. I was a poor widow with a fairly worthless son, and I was desperate for money. I was the landlady of the Aurora Hotel. It was a pretty shabby establishment, and I took out a significant insurance policy on it. It was no great loss when it burned to the ground. The fire was very well planned. And I must say, it was my idea. I had my son soak several rooms with the coal oil we used for our lamps. He sloshed it on the walls, drenched the curtains, and soaked the bedding. Then we waited for a night with just the right amount of wind. We did not have to wait long, it was March. He threw a match into the room, and the flames began. Of course, I had left the hotel before the fire started. The few guests of the hotel exited, and how was I supposed to know that a man named George Harold was going to stumble about and not get out in time? He was probably drunk. Well, the law figured me out. I was arrested. There was a lengthy trial. Yes, the testimony describing George's charred body made quite an impression on the jury. Happily, I was still young, and must say rather pretty, and I was able to convey how pitiable was my financial state. So though I was sentenced to be hung, community members circulated a petition asking for mercy, and I just went to prison. And not many years later, I was actually pardoned by the governor, and I am now free. Maybe crime does not pay, but if you have ingenuity and personal charm, things may turn out well for you. I do find, though, that as I get older, there are many nights when the ghost of George Harold appears in my bedroom. Sometimes he is aflame, and sometimes his face blackens and his limbs charred and shriveled. And he moans, and I regret what I have done.
Doctor, that was a
Is that you, George? George? Is that you?
doctor. That was a pretty terrible story. Are all your stories of such mean and vicious individuals?
Not all of vicious individuals, but it is the negative occurrences that tend to cause a greater disturbance in the evening.
Could you find the story of someone who's not so cold-blooded, perhaps?
I could try that for
I am Sister Catherine of the Sisters of Providence, Daughters of Charity, Servants of the Poor. As you may know, I spent 9 years in Walla Walla as head of St. Vincent Female Academy. This was from 1869 to 1878. But in 1863, I had passed through here with Mother Joseph. Having secured land to build our school and convent, we journeyed to the Idaho mining camps for what was called a begging tour. Our goal was to raise funds from miners who wintered here seeking, among other things, medical treatment. Care of the sick is an integral part of our mission. We collected $5,000 on that tour. Our travels did include physical hardship, and many nights we made camp in the wilderness. Often, this meant a congenial meal around the campfire with our guide, the Indian Sapiel, and our escort, Father Saint-Ange, both from St. Ignatius Mission, who accompanied us. But one night, between two mountain ranges dividing the Coeur d'Alene and Flathead missions, our respite took a terrifying turn. Though our stopping place was so heavily forested there was barely room to camp, the evening started well enough. We ate a venison supper, courtesy of Father Saint-Ange's hunting skill, said our evening prayers, and had just wrapped ourselves in our blankets when a terrifying howl scared us nearly out of our wits. Father took up his revolver and Zapiel his knife to cut firewood and start a blaze around the camp. Wolves encircled us, calling to each other and summoning their pack. Within half an hour, our camp was surrounded by 50 of the savage, howling beasts. Our horses, tethered inside the ring of fire, shivered and stamped with fright. Our campsite had been burned over the year before. The closest trees were very dry. Sparks leapt to those trees, and soon we were surrounded by a burning forest. Great branches fell to the ground. Howls of wolves doubled as through blinding smoke we battled the cinders that cut our tent, burnt some provisions, and damaged our saddles. With daylight, the wolves left at last. Thanks to Almighty God, the trees beyond our ring had been too damp for the fire to spread, though our danger had been very real. We offered humble thanksgiving for our deliverance and proceeded to break camp.
Doctor, I must say that was a terrifying tale. And yet I've heard nothing in these tales of anything resembling justice. I was under the impression that justice was done after we died, but I don't hear of any of that yet.
Well, we can always delve deeper.
My name is William Newell. I am the editor of the Walla Walla Statesman newspaper. I would like to read to you a ghastly but true story that I have prepared to print in the next edition of my newspaper. Before I read it, I would like to inform you that it appears to have been the infamous doings of our local vigilantes. I had been under the impression this rather outrageous group of men who were operating outside the law to supposedly help uphold the law in ridding the country of outlaws, sports, and other undesirables by giving the aforementioned individual a 24-hour notice to leave the country or be hung by certain committees of several men that had been disbanded, but apparently it has not, and is still active. My story, as I have written, reads as follows. A gruesome discovery, July 20th, 1866. On Saturday last, the authorities were notified that the body of a man had been found hanging on a tree by the side of the Walla Walla River, about 5 miles from this town. done. This was the first report. On further inquiry, a still more horrible state of affairs was disclosed. It seems that about a month since, the deceased had attempted to outrage the person of a young girl whose parents lived not very far distant from the scene of the hanging. As we are informed, he failed to accomplish his purpose and no other effort was made to bring him to trial. Subsequently, he was employed by Jesse Drumheller, Esquire, as a farm hand, and whilst at work for the gentleman, a party consisting of 4 or 5 men came and took him away, stating at the time that he was charged with attempting to commit an outrage. After his removal, nothing was heard or seen or known of the man until his remains were found as above described. From all the circumstances, it would seem that the party who took the man away from the Drumhellers were the man who hung him. After the hanging, it seems that his executioners never returned, and the body was allowed to hang until it rotted off at the neck. O.P. Justice of the Peace, who held the inquest, states that he found the body on the ground and the head and neck still hanging in the tree. A more ghastly sight was scarcely imagined. The remains were identified by the clothing as those of the man who was taken away from Mr. Drumheller, a farmhand who was employed by Mr. Drumheller. We have learned the name of this. Learned the name of this unfortunate victim of this horrible act as Mr. Recca, of whom little more known, and except that he accompanied Captain Bowen on one of his expeditions. I fervently hope this dastardly deed will cause the disbanding of vigilantes. I might add that the recent proffering of ghostly sightings may well be the floating head of Mr. Recca, searching for his long separated body.
Doctor, was a very graphic story indeed. I've heard of these stories and frightening and vicious. Would there be a story that would have some beauty in it? Something to make us think kinder of the voices that we hear?
That is hard to find in our world. It's hard to find in the ether as well, but it is there to be found.
Guten Abend, I'm Josephine Wolf. Most of you are aware that I own Walla Walla's finest house of ill repute, but some of you may not know that I originally staffed the business with ladies of the evening that accompanied me from San Francisco. Among those girls was a young woman named Julia. Julia was extraordinarily beautiful, and even more rare in our profession, incredibly sweet, which made her popular with the gentlemen that patronized my business. One of those gentlemen, a man named Carl, was particularly enamored with her and showered her with attention in an attempt to woo her affection. He was successful. The two fell deeply in love. They were so much in love that all of us expected Carl to ask Julia to marry him. And when our favorite jeweler let it be known that Carl had bought a wedding ring, we all anticipated that the joyous event was imminent. When Carl arrived in the house that night for his appointment, Julia met him wearing her very best gown, and her face was aglow with happiness. The two moved to an alcove at the back of the parlor where they could achieve a modicum of privacy, but still be close enough that we could share in the celebration when Julia had accepted his proposal. I observed them unobtrusively. Carl
took Julia's hands and told her that he was at a point in his life that he felt it was time to take a wife and start a family. He added that he was madly in love with her, but that marriage to a woman in her profession would not further his societal ambitions. So he asked the niece of a wealthy businessman to marry him, and she had said yes. But Carl reassured the devastated Julia, as soon as his bride was settled in her new home and hopefully breeding, he intended to visit Julia as often as he could. No, the broken-hearted Julia declared, I will never see you again. And she turned her back on him and ignored his pleas for her to understand his position. I ordered Carl from the house and directed the now sobbing Julia upstairs to her room. Her friends tried to comfort her with offers of tea and biscuits, a length of fancy lace, and even a jeweled brooch. But Julia just turned her face to the wall and continued crying. I had everyone leave her alone in the hope that she would soon cry herself to sleep. That was a mistake. For the next day, when I entered Julia's room to rouse her for a meal, I was dismayed to discover naught but her body, already gone cold. It appears that a woman with an excess of sensibility can die from a broken heart. Carl ended up marrying his advantageous bride, and I can say with some satisfaction that she proved to be a shrew who made his life miserable. And for those of us in the brothel, yes, sweet Julia was gone, but we were not. And, well, life must go on. But if you go into Julia's former room and listen very, very carefully, you can still hear the faintest echo of her broken-hearted songs.
Doctor, I asked for a story of beauty and you delivered that. But I must say that in my experience, it's not always the beautiful that are the victims. Human nature being what it is, do not always take into account the looks of their victims. I'm sure you've heard stories like that.
Yes, one comes to mind that I've tapped into before. Let me see if I can find it once again.
It is Wednesday, May 6th, and the headline in the newspaper says, Mrs. Anna Aldrich, owner of one of the finest ranches in Walla Walla County, is missing. Well, let me tell you where I am, and it isn't pretty. Friday before, on May 1st, my hired laborer Bud offered to take me up to Coffee Eye to look at timber that I wanted to sell. He had asked me before about selling him my house and grounds, but I explained to him that my husband had built me this house. I raised my two daughters, Minnie and Clara, out of there, and now I have grandchildren, and the answer was no. However, I still wanted to sell this timber. He rented a rig. It was a lovely spring day, and off we went. I waved at people along the way who were working in their fields. I got out of the wagon once we arrived, but shortly Bud grabbed a pickaxe he had in the wagon and came after me. I tried to run, but with long skirts and not being agile, that was not possible. He soon bashed me in the head and dumped me in a hole left by a fallen tree. Upon his return, he moved his pregnant wife and his two brothers into my house. Monday, May 4th, he takes my clothes to Martin's Livery to send to Spokane, telling them Mrs. Aldrich has moved there and she'll pick them up. He then engages an Effie Anderson, a woman of the underworld, to draft a letter to Mr. Ghost, my son-in-law, to tell his wife that her mother had moved to Spokane and has leased the property to him as well as all of his stuff. He then decided that wasn't going to work as questions were already being asked about my whereabouts. What did he think was going to happen? Sarah Adele lived just next door, and my nephew Shelley, who helped me with the farming, lived the next farm down. He then stopped at Frank Davin's saloon to have him call Mr. Ghost, saying the same thing. But Mr. Davin ignored him, thinking he was just drunk. On Tuesday, Mr. Ghost calls the sheriff to report his mother-in-law is missing. Sheriff Howland went out to my house, finding my strong box in the backyard broken into, papers as well as my thimble and eyeglasses burnt in the stove. The brothers are arrested as Bud's story keeps changing. The sheriff soon learns that two went up the road, but only one came back down. On Thursday, Sheriff Howland dispatches search parties into the blues, and a $1,000 reward is issued for finding me. Is that really all I'm worth? Friday, now a week later, Mr. Brutton and Mr. Ross find me, still wearing my hat, but partially eaten by wild animals and insects. Thank goodness Sheriff Howland would not let people view me as I was brought down to the coroner's office. I continue to be in the news with detailed accounts, all the people involved in the search parties, all the questions and answers of those summoned for the jury duty, who was picked for the jury and why, and the trial itself. To add to the rumor mill, my nephew Shelley was getting married on the 18th, with the bride to be the older sister of Bud's wife. The murder trial was to start on May 25th, but it was postponed by the defense until June 8th, as the defense wanted to prepare an insanity plea. The first trial ended in a hung jury, but the second trial resulted in a conviction of first-degree murder. Bud was subsequently hung at the state prison. Bud's wife moved with her parents to Oregon. Minnie and her family moved into my house. My bones may be at Mountain View Cemetery, but I am watching over my house as it continues to evolve over time.
Well, Doctor, I'm confused. These stories that your contraption comes up with,
It's not coming up with anything. The stories are already there.
well, but they all deal with death. Death. Is there anything in here that actually doesn't have someone die?
Well, not too many that I've discovered so far. Let me see if I can find something that might be more what you're looking for.
My name is William McVeigh, the last chief trader of the Hudson Bay Company in Fort Walla Walla. The Hudson Bay Company was formed on May 2nd of the year 1670 in the reign of King Charles II. Almost to the day, 100 years later, April 30th of 1670, a young boy of Welsh immigrant parents was born. He went to the Gray Coat School for the sons of working men, where he excelled in math and navigation. He wanted to be a navigator for the Navy, for His Majesty's Navy. But as it happened, the Hudson's Bay Company were looking for a new talent, and they came to the Gray Coat School and discovered that this was a lad they would really like to have in their business. They paid $5, 5 sterling pounds for his education and ventured into 7 years with the Hudson Bay Company. In the year 1787, on a bend of the Saskatchewan River, he became quite expert at the game of chess. No, checkers. Let's not be snobbish. Checkers it was. He became quite expert at the 12-man and the 24-man boards, and when he could find no one to play against him, he practiced intensely with himself. His name was David Thompson. He would become the greatest land surveyor in the history of the world, surveying and mapping a great deal of the North American continent, particularly north into Canada, but also down into this area. In the year 1811, he put a stake in the ground claiming Waluka for the crown. His great map hangs in the archives of Ontario and describes the vast territory with which he became intimate over a long life. From the shores of Hudson's Bay to the Pacific Ocean, the Athabasca River to the Missouri. In the narrative that he completed when he was 80 years old, he recalls that his brief career as a champion at checkers, not to be snobbish, checkers, along the Saskatchewan in 1787, ended one day in April of that year when a strange incident occurred. In his words, having no one to play against, I was sitting alone at a small table with a checkerboard before me when the devil sat down opposite to me and began to play. The devil, in his features and his color, resembled a Spaniard. He had tall, short black horns on his forehead which pointed forward. His head and body, down to his waist, for no more of him could be seen, was covered with glossy, black, curling hair. His countenance was mild and grave. Now, Thompson says nothing of the inner tension that one might experience while playing checkers with the devil. His narrative is wonderfully empty of subjectivity. The devil, who lost every game but did not lose his temper, is alone the proper subject of these sentences. He kept his temper throughout, but looked more grave as the afternoon wore on. At length he got up, or rather disappeared. The whole of this strange incident is still playing before me 63 years after. After the devil disappeared, all was silence and solitude. It was broad daylight and my eyes were wide open. I could not decide if it had been a dream or reality. I made no vow, but took a resolution never to play a game of chance or skill or anything that had the appearance of them, and I have kept it.
You see, there was no death in that story, but it did involve the Prince of Darkness. This machine, the stories that stick in the ether tend to be the ones that scientifically may be classified as spooky.
I hear a lot of subjectivity. Is there anything in here that we could go ahead and back up with facts? Something, I don't know, about the town?
Yes, there's one incident that I believe your audience should be familiar with. They've read in the history of the town. Let me tap into that.
I was with Troop D, 4th U.S. Cat, Fort Walla Walla, spring of '91, when a quiet post suddenly turned bitter. Private Emmett Miller was the one who started it, though it was no fault of his. He was 32, easygoing, steady with his work. proud of his time he had spent in the first cap. On the night it happened, he and his friend Cutter were at the Road Saloon with a friend and a retired soldier named Mr. Began. They were talking about the old service when Andrew Hunt, a gray, soft-spoken gambler, suddenly spat on every soldier of the first and was always telling them that he was a son of God. Now Miller answered calmly. He had served with the first and wanted no trouble. Hunt drew a pistol and shot him in the chest. Miller fell before anyone could even move. Now the police took Hunt back, but word rushed back to the post quicker than the wagon. Miller was brought to the hospital, paralyzed and fainting. The sheriff came so the troopers could give his statement. I remember standing outside the ward when Hunt was brought in, lantern light on his face. Miller pointed him out as the shooter. Some said Hunt even cried. None of it mattered to us, though. A man who killed a soldier for no reason is marked. Every trooper felt the same. When word spread that Hunt was being returned to the jail in town, and the anger of our ranks just grew even more. One drunken fellow bragged loud that 50 of us waited at the gate to take the prisoner. Because of that, the sheriff got an escort back to town. Now I heard later that some of the men tried to block the road, but the hack made it back inside the guardhouse before anything turned ugly. Afterwards, the colonel ordered and offered a stronger escort to get Hunt to the jail. And that night he tried to account for every man and weapon on the post. The next night, the plan took shape. We didn't vote. We didn't argue. We simply understood what needed to be done. After dark, we cut the telegraph lines, and in silence, companies of soldiers moved out, 200 or so, marched like it was drill. We reached the town square and surrounded the courthouse. Men with carbines took the street corners. The second line pressed in tight around the building. Those who tried to get close were told they were not wearing the right clothes. The townfolk backed away. We went to the jail door under the courthouse stairs, and we demanded Hunt. The sheriff refused. Some among us threatened to blow the door. Maybe truth, maybe scared. Inside, deputies pulled back deeper into the cells, but it was no use. The sheriff lost his nerve and opened up. We rushed in, stripped the deputies of their weapons. The sheriff begged his men not to fire, saying they would kill if they could. They gave up. We took the keys, and Hunt stood silent as they opened the cell. Only words he muttered, "I guess my time has come." We pushed him up the steps in the yard, and with a single crack, a shot rang out. Hunt fell face down. Then many shots followed, some straight into him, others fired upwards. Smoke hung low. It was over in a moment. And we slipped away through the alleys and empty streets quietly and quickly. By tattoo, every man was back in the bunk, lying boots below as if the night had been a dream instead of facts. The trumpeters, missing during the trouble, returned just in time to sound the final call. At daybreak, town peoples gathered around Hunt's body. The coroner counted 16 wounds. His skull had been smashed in the temple, likely with a carving stock. No one claimed that below was from them. The verdict was the mob had done it. It assumed that it was soldiers, but unknown. The gambler paid to bury him. The same day, Miller slipped into an unconsciousness he died on the 27th. He buried him, we buried him next to the next day with full military honors. Band slowed ahead with his horse behind him, boots reserved in the stirrups. I still remember the sound as a horse crossed the grass. Some call what we did a crime without excuse. Maybe they were right. We took the law into our own hands, but I saw how Miller died and how the gambler shot him without hesitation. We carried Miller to his grave with full honors, and we carried Hunt to his end without any. Between those two facts lie a truth that still wrestles with me, how the thin line between a soldier's justice and lawless revenge, and how quickly men in uniform can become something else when no one of their own is struck down. I cannot tell you with certainty whether we were right. I can only tell you what happened, how we moved together, how no man spoke a name after, how loyalty held together, silence held, and the memory of those nights of April of '91 has stayed with me longer than any bugle call or campaign. Some things you carry, even after time in the saddle is done.
That story, soldiers and loyalty, almost as if it's virtue, perhaps misplaced virtue. Tell me, Doctor, are there any stories in there of misplaced virtue?
Yes, there is one that I think fits that criteria. The story cries out softly, but it does cry out.
Please, if anyone is out there, can you hear me? My name is Florence Goodwell, and I'm a nurse. The year is 1917, and we are trying to cure a dreadful disease known as typhoid. It's horrible, a disease caused by improper hygiene and tainted water. It can cause muscle aches, headaches, fever, and sometimes death. I believe it all started with Mary Mallon, although I knew her as Typhoid Mary. She was an Irish immigrant, a cook. She made so many people sick through the meals she prepared. Families fell ill. Some lost their children. It was later discovered that she carried typhoid in her body, but never developed the symptoms herself, something we had never heard of. She was forcibly quarantined twice because she wouldn't stop cooking and she refused proper hygiene. She didn't wash her hands, not even after she had used the restroom. It's awful to think about or even talk about now. Unfortunately, one of the most popular dishes she made was ice cream with raw peaches. It spread those typhoid germs from her dirty hands to the people she cooked for. She was released from the first quarantine under the condition she would never cook again, but she changed her name to Mary Brown and went to work again, this time for the hospital where I practiced several years. The hospital was Sloan's maternity hospital. She spread that dreaded typhoid to 25 people. Doctors, nurses, and staff. 2 of them died, and one of them is my best friend. After I found out Mary had used a false name and went back to cooking without washing her dirty hands, I became so angry. How could she? How could she be so careless? The authorities arrested her and put her into quarantine for the 2nd time, I think for the rest of her life. But for me, I could feel no relief from her imprisonment. The memories of my friend's suffering, her burning fever, her delirium, her pleas for water and help, her aches and pains, all the vomiting and the rashes and the cough that she endured, all because one woman wouldn't wash her hands. I hate to dwell on the matter. What good does it even do? I couldn't live with the memories anymore, so I came to Walla Walla, hopeful that I would find peace. I became a nurse again, but then the people of Walla Walla started contracting typhoid. Could it be possible that I'm a carrier? Am I another Typhoid Mary? Oh, I can't stop the voices in my head. I need a way to make them stop. Please, if anyone is out there, can you hear me?
Doctor, if I were to say one thing about your stories, they affect one. You know, we have a weather update that says that the storm is upon us. And I'm wondering, Doctor, although you said at the beginning that these are not ghost stories, these are voices of real people, and sure they are. But somewhere in that box, that contraption, could you find a good ghost story?
Yes, I've heard one of our souls talking about a ghost story. It's a hard one to find. I think I've got it.
My name is William Tye. I'm the conductor on Doc Baker's Walla Walla and Columbia River Railroad, and I made the trip from here to Walla Walla and then back and forth so many times I lost track. But tonight, I want to tell you about a story that I didn't believe myself for a long time, and I still have some doubts about it. As you know, a conductor is responsible for the people on his train. During the day, we would make train loads of grain and supplies for the fort, livestock and such, but at night, we would carry the passengers. Our passenger cars were very crude. They didn't have any heat. They only had one lantern for light, and so consequently, most of the people preferred traveling in the cool of the evening. One night at the depot, I had a number of people that were waiting to get on the train. I counted them, and there were 12. And as usual, I had their tickets one by one as they got on the train. And before the train leaves, I always count to make sure I have the same number of people as I do tickets. I counted them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And off we went. It's clickety-clack down the track, and we got into Tushi. It's a short stop there. People have to attend to personal needs, if you know what I mean. And they would get off the train for a few minutes, back on, and we would proceed to Wallula. This night, just a few miles west of Tushi, a young lady, all dressed in white, came to me and she said, "Conductor," she said, "I really don't feel well. Can you stop the train? I need to get off for a few minutes." And I said, "Sure." And I held my light out, signaled to the crew up in the cab to pull the train to a stop. I looked around and I said, "The river's that way, and there's a few bushes just a short distance. I'm going to be outside. I'll look around the train while you take care of your business." She said, "It's very dark out there. I can't see what I'm looking for." And I took the light off the overhead of the cabin, and I handed it to her, and I said, "Be careful. There might be coyotes out there tonight. We often hear them along that stretch of the road." Well, I looked around the train, made sure that everything was all right, and then I looked for that lantern, and I didn't see it. And I looked again, both sides of the train, behind the train. I walked up to the engineer and I said, "Ben, did you see that lantern?" He said, "What lantern?" He said, "Bill, I never saw any such lantern." And so I yelled, "Ma'am, we're ready to go. Get on board." Nothing. Silence. I asked two of the passengers that were there with me, two of the men, "Give me a hand. We got to see where that woman went." And so we got off the train and we looked around. And, "Ma'am, we must go. And the two men got back on the train, and then it dawned on me, maybe she got on and I didn't see her. So I got on the train and I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Well, I had 12 people and that's what I'm responsible for. So we took off. We went to Wallula. When we got to Wallula, there were only 4 people to make a return trip to Walla Walla. And so it was pretty uneventful. They took a nap in the back of the passenger train, and I kept an eye out the window and the door, just on the off chance that maybe that woman, I miscounted and she's still out there somewhere. When we got back to where we left her off, I had the train stopped again, and I went out and I looked. And I called, "Ma'am, are you still here? Are you all right?" Silence. Nothing. Not even the lantern. We came into Walla Walla, and Doc Baker was there. And Doc said to me, "How'd it go, William?" He always called me William. I said, "Pretty good, Doc." I always called him Doc. He said, "How do you like those new rails we put in?" And it dawned on me, I remember, up until now we had wooden rails with metal strips on top, and they were terrible. Every once in a while they'd come loose, we'd derail, we'd have a heck of a time. But then Doc got somewhere steel rails and started to replace them. And he used that stretch between Touchy and Reese, and he did a good job. We made good time on that stretch. And I said, "Doc, just where did you get those rails?" He said, "I got a good deal on them. I heard about an auction over in Wales." He said the railroad over there had a bad accident. The train went off the track, a lot of people were injured, and 2 people were killed. The people that were killed were a young lady and her small 4-year-old child. The railroad, of course, went out of business. They couldn't handle all the lawsuits, and I got the rails at a good price. And they're the ones we put out there. "You like them, William?" I said, "Well, I do and I don't. Yeah, they make the train go a lot faster and a lot smoother, but there's something odd out there, Doc." He said, "What did you see?" I said, "Well, I had a passenger a couple of nights ago. It was a night like this with the waxing gibbous moon, exactly like the one we have outside. And I said, she got off the train and I couldn't find her again. And yet I had all the passengers I accounted for." He said, "Well, that was certainly odd." And she said, "No, Doc," he said, "did she pay her ticket?" I said, "Well, I had 12 paying customers and 12 tickets. I just don't know what happened to her." He said, "Well, don't worry about it. She'll show up someday." Now, Doc had a lot more faith in that than I did. And we went back out the next night, and it was again a waxing gibbous moon, just like the one outside tonight. And in that waxing gibbous moon, we saw the light again. This time, I walked down to the lantern. It was still lit after all that time, but there was no one around. I brought the lantern back and I said again, "Man, are you out here somewhere?" And the engineer, he tooted his horn, or his whistle, whoop, whoop. And I said, "What do you want, Ben?" He said, "Maybe she just lives around here somewhere, and she gets off the train and walks there." I said, "There isn't a house out here for miles. No one would get off the train out here in the dark and walk that far to a house." And we continued on our way. And now, many years later, even as we speak on a waxing gibbous moon like tonight, even now, you can walk along that stretch of track, along the Walla Walla River, and you can see it. Some say it's just mist off the river. Other people, they're not so sure it's mist. It just might be that lady in white.
Doc, I asked for a ghost story and you delivered. I can see our time's about up. Doc, thank you for showing up tonight. You know, normally I'm all for technology. New inventions makes our country great. But I must confess your contraction there does not put my mind at ease. Perhaps there's some things you shouldn't know. It appears that Dr. Bratton's discovery shows us that we may have to rethink what we know about the mysterious ether on the other side of our mortal existence. What else may we find out that's out there? Perhaps the past does come back to haunt us. Perhaps Dr. Bratton will share more of his discoveries in the future, but for now, until next time, sleep well, safe and secure in your bed. And if you hear anything, I'm sure that it's just your imagination.
Thank you all for coming to our second Living History radio play. We thank Gary Wentz, who is our organizer and creativity behind it, and all the tremendous reenactors who participated tonight. I hope you were just scared enough. I also want to thank people who attend Living History on a regular basis throughout the season, and we look forward, of course, to starting up again in April. Now I invite you to please have refreshments, and we will see you.